Listen, there was a big fight this weekend that I had a lot of feelings on. I was super excited for this Canelo versus Crawford fight. And yo, it was on Netflix. It was a big deal. 100 M's for Canelo, at least 100 M's was the payout in comparison to Crawford's 10 M's. But man, did you guys watch? What are your reactions? How are y'all feeling? Let me hear it, y'all.
I did not watch. I did not see anything online about this fight either, which is kind of crazy because I feel like a lot of the time I get it thrown into my feed, like whenever there's a big fight. But yeah, I didn't know this was happening. So
yeah, that is kind of wild because this is like one of the super fights of the century or whatever it is they say. Just in terms of pound for pound.
Yeah.
Well, I just made it sound a little crazy, but either way,
no, you're right.
You're right. About pound for pound, like we're talking about Crawford, who was like pound for pound king for a lot of years, and Canelo was always in the top 5 pound for pound rankings, and he even himself went up the weight divisions. These days, people probably say it's Usyk. So, and also Crawford and Canelo are both kind of on the way out in their careers, so it's maybe a little late. But if we're talking about, first of all, I did watch it just to be clear. But if we're talking about excitement in the narrative, not only are these two of the best boxers on the planet, but the narrative going into it, Crawford jumping up multiple weight divisions to face Canelo, who's the king of his division. So already there's the whole narrative: David versus Goliath. Will the weight matter? Will the whatever? Well, how much will the weight difference make a difference in the fight? And also the skill difference, because then people are saying, okay, well, Crawford's the better boxer skillfully, but Canelo's going to have the power sitting down on shots. Can Crawford deal with that power? So there's a lot of intrigue in that sense going into it. And also like the legacy on the line, because Canelo only had 2 defeats going into this fight to 2 amazing boxers. So it's not like, no shame in that. But the legacy on the line for Crawford to become the first ever 3-time undisputed, 3 different weight classes in the modern era, or like the 4-belt era, or whatever it's called. So there's a lot of narrative on the line, and outside of the fact that it's already the best fighting the best, because that's what people want to see. We're tired of these, especially in the modern era. A lot of boxers duck the best. They just want to pad their record, get in, get out, get the money, which it is what it is. I ain't gonna be mad at you for wanting to get a bag, but for the fans, we want to see the best fighting the best. And Crawford and Canelo, and you have to give it, I know we could talk about sports washing or any of that kind of stuff, but Turkey Al-Sheikh out in Saudi, he has come through with the ring and Riyadh season, all this kind of stuff, and he is creating the best matches that everyone wants to see. All these people have been ducking each other for years. He said, "Now we're done with all that. The best is gonna fight the best." And within a couple of years, he's made a lot of great fights. I'm trying to think of some of them on the top of my head now. Even like the bringing in Ngannou over to boxing to fight Fury. He fought AJ. Usyk, Fury, which looked like it wasn't going to happen for a long time. Usyk and Fury have fought a few times now. Joshua, when he lost to Dubois. A lot of great fights. All of Usyk's fights, basically. Even Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, all the that card they had in New York a few months ago. That was a disappointing card, I won't lie, but it turned out to be disappointing. But the names going into it, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. So a lot of great fights we've been seeing recently, and this one is supposed to be the pinnacle of all this. Although we're still hoping to get Fury AJ, that would be crazy. But we can talk more about the fight itself. But just to set the stage for why this was such an exciting thing and why I'm so surprised that you didn't hear anything about it. I know you're not into the scene, but it's kind of wild that it didn't permeate. Maybe it didn't get to the casuals as much. I am a casual, to be fair. Generally in boxing, I'm pretty casual.
I don't know. With all this talk, man.
I follow boxing, but I wouldn't say
I am a casual.
Yeah. I should say like the mainstream is what I meant to say, because I clearly I know a little bit, but I wouldn't say like there are people who know way. Like I'm not like deep into boxing like I am in soccer. So it's like there's levels for sure.
For sure. And yeah, I think I'll just add to like the way like it's been a lot of these big like fight cards, but you mentioned Ryan Garcia. He also had that fight in Times Square against Rolly Romero a few months back as well. So it's not only these big cards that we're seeing, but we're also seeing boxing is also now being seen as a sport where we can now see it as like this big spectacle. Like it's not just the people in the ring, it's not just the boxers in the ring, but it's also like just from a visual perspective, it's also completely changing as we see it. And I think we saw a little bit of that this weekend as well. Like, yes, it was in Vegas, which is like typical for Canelo. Canelo is known to have his fights in Vegas, especially around September time. It's like, you know, he owns that like Mexican Independence weekend. So, you know, that, you know, there were a lot of people showing out for that reason as well. You saw just the support that he had on his side, but even just like when you just look, if you were watching the actual just card, if you're watching the other fights, you saw that the spectacle was there, and there was a lot of anticipation before both boxers came out. So it's really exciting to see that, yes, there is kind of a turn of the page that we're seeing right now, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for the sport of boxing. And even though this was a high caliber fight, I think you're always going to look at this and think like, man, what if we had this fight, I don't know, 3 to 5 years ago? Like, even though it was still at a good time, I think the narrative may still be, man, Canelo is towards the end of his prime, even though Crawford is older than him. So I'm not using like age as an excuse in any way, but like I do wish I had seen this fight probably when both boxers were in their earlier 30s. But still, you know, it was still a great fight. It was still there was still a lot of anticipation. And if we're actually going to talk about the fight itself, a good fight overall. It wasn't one of those fights where there's a boxer chasing another one, or there wasn't like any ducking taking place. Like, these were two high caliber boxers going at it. And, you know, I think when you look at the result, I think Canelo just got outmatched, outclassed, and clearly Crawford was in much better condition. So from a personal level, I was a little bit disappointed. I was rooting for Canelo, but, you know, I think the fight that we got was worth all the anticipation that was there. I don't know if you feel the same way, Dre.
For sure. I feel like, well, I was gonna say I got my money's worth, but it was on Netflix, so I mean, still pay, but
still paying.
but it's a different model, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I think going into it, I will be upfront and say I was rooting for Crawford, because for me it was like, I don't really have favorite boxers in the same way, but for me it was for the story, for the underdog, I like to see history get made in that sense. So for me, Crawford jumping up the weight divisions, going to take on Canelo, and no one thinking he can get it done. Obviously, in reality, people saw, okay, maybe this is actually going to be a competitive fight. But going into it, Canelo was still the heavy favorite, because there's weight divisions for a reason. And usually when guys jump up the weight divisions, it's not about just, okay, now you weigh, like, say this fight was at 168. Now you weigh 168 pounds. We both weigh 168 pounds. The weight's going to sit differently on each fighter. You're coming up, you have to deal with more weight on you. Now, can you last the distance in the same way you did at 154? Or even Crawford started at like 135. So even then, it's like a crazy jump. But can you adapt to that weight class as well? So the fact that Crawford was in better condition than Canelo at Canelo's weight class, I think that itself was impressive. I mean, obviously he was shredded going into the fight, but you would think that it would be, from a stamina point of view, it would be more evenly matched in that sense. But even just the output wasn't that great from Canelo. It was a lot of one shot here, one shot there. He's not really putting together combinations. And I think you have to give Crawford credit for that. He did a lot of posturing before the fight. Like, it looked a lot like he was going to come out orthodox, but from first bell, he came out southpaw, and it was clear it gave Canelo issues. He was just way slicker, way faster. His combinations were put together. He didn't do that much body work, which I thought he might have. So the fact that also that Canelo was doing a lot of body work and Crawford still had the better gas tank, too, was like, okay, that's a little bit suspect on Canelo's gas tank there, because the output wasn't that high. But generally, it just looked like Crawford, his eyes, like he can just see everything that was happening, and Canelo seemed like he was getting frustrated over time. To me, honestly, it was pretty decisive. Like, it was still a good fight. I think you can have a runaway winner and still have a good fight. I think the scorecards made it look closer than it was. I think you actually watched the fight. Maybe if you're someone, you can judge it and say, okay, maybe you want to give Canelo more credit for like putting like walking forward and putting that pressure on. But a lot of these rounds, I think earlier it was harder for people to see it because Canelo was like more in there. But as time went on, you realize, oh, Crawford's really just picking him apart a lot of these rounds. And I had it like realistically in real time scoring it, I had it like 10-2, 9-3. I could go 8-4 if I'm being generous to Canelo. I can't see a 7-5 or well, obviously it didn't go 6-6, but like the fact that we had like a 115, 113 or something like that scorecard, to me that's blasphemous. But you know, it is what it is. Canelo in Vegas, you got to give something to that. But I think overall we saw levels, and that's no disrespect to Canelo. Canelo's one of the greatest fighters of the generation, and only losing to Mayweather, Bivol. And to be fair, in the Bivol fight, that's Canelo going up, and that's something where in that fight I was rooting for Canelo because I'm like, okay, I want to see greatness. You move up, you get that done. He wasn't able to get it done. Bivol absolutely dismantled him, to be honest. But losing that fight, and now I'm losing to Crawford. Those are three amazing fighters to lose to. So there's no like shame in that. I respect him for even fighting those fights. And obviously those are at different points in his career. So, or like young Canelo, whatever. But we got to see now if Canelo's on this level, we already know Canelo's one of the top in the game. If Crawford is this like much better than him, like on a decisive fight, I know we could talk about time in the career, age, you know, obviously like you said, Crawford's old too. Crawford, I want to see him retire after this fight, honestly. Like I think you can go out on this is an amazing way to go out. But if Crawford is that much more decisively better, moving up in weight to fight Canelo and giving him a boxing lesson, we really have to have conversations about where he stands in the all-time rankings of boxers. Because now we're looking at, you are definitively probably the pound for pound. It's either going to be him or Usyk, pound for pound king of this generation. So both of them are now in these conversations where if you're that of your generation, now you go into the level where, okay, now we can have debates about with Ali, with Floyd, with whoever else, Sugar Ray Robinson, whatever, of all these all-time greats, Lennox Lewis, whoever. Put him in that conversation. I'm not, no, that's to the point where like I'm not well versed enough in boxing to say, okay, this person over this person. I'm still gonna have Ali because Ali, I think a lot of it is also the mythos and what he did outside of boxing adds to his legacies. I think it's hard to really surpass that. But generally, Crawford, I think I was just very lucky to be able to witness something like that in real time. I think that's an all-time achievement.
100%, man. It's really cool to have seen, just like you said, man, history being made right in front of us, greatness just right in front of us. I think this is the last fight of this caliber that we're gonna see from Canelo. And listen, like even though he lost, I was very satisfied with the way he came out. I think he did take, I would say, some of the earlier rounds. I was feeling good. As someone who's rooting for him, I was feeling good at the start of the fight, but once we got around to like, I want to say midway through, maybe like the 7th round, I think I was getting to that point of accepting that, nah, this is gonna go Crawford's way. And you know, I was honestly pushing for Canelo to potentially go for the knockout, and you saw that he was kind of fighting a little bit out of pace, out of his, I guess you could say, like his normal, not his normal style, but he was definitely putting on a little bit more pressure than he typically does. Because he knew that he was losing the fight. And so it's crazy to see how many, one, like the chin, like the amount of punches that he took, and the fact that there were a lot of moments where I was like, I didn't know how much he was going to be able to take, because he did seem a little bit disoriented. Definitely seemed like he took some of those punches and they had a crazy impact on him. But you know, the fact that he was able to even make it to the end too, like I also want to commend that as well. So, you know, all around, I don't think I can remember the last time a fight of this caliber delivered. So I'm really happy to see that. I hope that the future of boxing continues to go this way. You know, I think boxing fans have definitely been deprived of what they've wanted. So this is a step in the right direction, think about us in high school, man. Like we saw, was it Pacquiao versus Mayweather that happened when we were in high school, and that was we got that way after we should have. Like we should have gotten that at least 5 years prior. And a fight like Canelo Crawford, like I think this is one of those fights that I would love to see a second. I would love to see a third. Like I would love to see this become a series or a trilogy or whatever it is. Do I think it's going to get to that point? No. I think that's also just recency bias because I just watched it and it delivered. But, you know, I think, like I said, Crawford outmatched Canelo, so I don't really know if there's any there's definitely money to be made. I don't know if there's anything else that needs to be proven. So that, but me saying that is just, I hope that that's just like a testament to how entertaining this fight was and how much it delivered. So I just want to say also props to Netflix, man. The Tyson Jake Paul fight, I was very nervous going into this fight because that card itself, like it was so, like the production was terrible. The connection kept lagging. There was a lot of pauses and, you know, a lot of pieces of the fight that were missed. The fact that this and I know the bar is so low, like I shouldn't be thanking Netflix for showing us the full fight, but I was nervous going into it. Looks like they have things figured out, and Netflix is just on, you know, they were already this like juggernaut. It's crazy to see how much bigger they're getting and how I'm just picturing just what this does for them as a streaming service. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Props to them for delivering on the fight as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I too was going into the fight like, you know, we'll see how it goes. But I guess to be fair, Tyson Paul was just before they started like their WWE run with Raw, and I guess they've worked out the kinks over the course of the year because that's been a relatively smooth partnership there. So I guess we're really seeing their transition into a strong live sporting event, or maybe they're gonna do. I know they actually have done live events before sports. Like I know they did like something with one of their reality shows. They did like a live finale or something like that. I can't remember what show, but so I think they see a future in that for sure, and that just adds another string to their bow. And it's smart. It's honestly smart because I think a lot before this live sporting thing, a lot of people, and I think justifiably so, we're looking at Netflix. Like a lot of these other streaming services are kind of starting to put you under a little bit of pressure. Like you had that number one spot locked down for a lot of years because you got the jump. You were ahead of the people, ahead of the curve. You had the original shows that people were excited about like 10 years ago. And then in the last few years, especially since I guess pandemic too, a lot of these other streaming services are coming out with bangers, and the Netflix originals were not hitting. I'm not gonna lie. They you know, they got one off of Squid Game, you know, whatever, but it became more few and far between. I think Netflix, rightfully so, we're like, okay, let's pivot. We're gonna still, obviously, they're still gonna do their streaming service, their original programming and scripted television, but let's add something else that makes the Netflix subscription worth it. And honestly, it's working out. I think it's a smart new thing to bring people in, bring in the sporting audience, and especially working with these massive fights because they're not doing it for a lot of different events, at least not yet. So at least introducing it with these massive events. Something like a Canelo Crawford or a Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, as crazy as that was. I think they're doing Jake Paul, Gervonta Davis, which is also insane, but that's in like a couple months as well. I think it's definitely smart. And to wrap up the whole, Canelo Crawford, I think you made a lot of great points about the fight and I guess the state of boxing and like how these big fights don't always deliver. I would say like probably the last one that delivered I can remember was actually Haney Garcia, because that one had the whole, you know, crazy buildup and a lot of recklessness and then the fight ended up being wild. And then before that, probably like Usyk Fury 2 was good, but and even Fury Wilder back in the day, those are good fights too. But it's not always, it doesn't always hit. And honestly, it really doesn't always hit. Especially the best guys, they tend to be a little cagey sometimes. But for me personally, just because you mentioned this, I do not want to see another one. Only because if it was this decisive, I worry about, okay, you give Crawford more, now he has more confidence, more time at this weight, and more age on both of them, I worry we could see an even more convincing matchup the next time around. And for Canelo's sake and Canelo's legacy, I think 3 losses is good, man. You could go out on 3 losses, call it a day, unless he wants to challenge himself and take on like Benavidez or something, which I don't see happening. But
we need that. I want to see that so badly.
I'd rather him go and do that. I guess Benavidez went up to 175, so we'll see. But yeah, I think this is a good one for. I understand what you're saying too, and there definitely is a lot of money to be made. So I would not be surprised if we hear in the next week, hey, Crawford Canelo 2, let's go. But I think it would be nice to see Crawford, especially when he's like 37, 38. Like, man, call it a day.
Turning 38 next month, I think.
Yeah. So call it a day. I don't think there's no better storybook ending than holding all these belts at 168 after starting at 135. And I think you can have that as your last image of the people you give the people. Call it a day and see you later. So, but yeah, it was a great event, great fight, and it's cool to cover boxing, man. We should cover boxing a little bit more. If there's any other big fights, not like every week, but